Hokage married Kushina and became Naruto's father. Episode 31. Tsunade snorted, "Boy, don't say such strange things, I'll make you lose miserably later." "Okay, but what if I win?" "Can you win?" "If you win, I can promise you anything." Tsunade laughed confidently. Go to the training ground." Uzumaki Mito shook his head and said, "You guys go. My old wife is going to rest. The voice is small at night, don't make noise with others." Tsunade waved his hand and said, "Grandma, I know." Tsunade felt that his thoughts were clear, thinking that he would finish his own abuse of Ye, and suddenly smiled. Soon, Hokage and Tsunade arrived at the training ground. The training ground was empty, and Tsunade picked a boulder and easily smashed it with a punch, which instantly turned into a wrist-breaking platform to use. "Boy, how's it going, scared?" Tsunade originally wanted to shock Hokage, but seeing that Hokage didn't care at all, he suddenly felt even more upset. "You'll know how good I am later." Hokage and Tsunade stood at opposite ends of the stone platform, clasping each other's hands. Tsunade also turned to Kushina and said, "Kushina, you step back and be careful to hurt you." Kushina nodded and retreated 10 meters away, and then shouted loudly, 3, 2, 1, start. A. Tsunade let out a continuous roar, and the golden chakra erupted from his body the moment Kushina announced the start. Ye Feng smiled slightly, and his strength began to rise. 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. I saw that on Ye Feng's body. Purple chakra also appeared. Tsunade was slightly distracted, looking at the chakra on Ye Feng's body. It turned out to be exactly the same as his grandfather. At the same time, a huge force also came from his hand. "Humph." Tsunade snorted, and in an instant opened the Ein seal on his forehead. The art of 100 heroes. The chakra on Tsunade's body was about to overflow to redeem the disadvantage just now. The power of this kid turned out to be so great. And also with a breezy look? Tsunade let out a low roar, and his whole body was covered with a golden sheen. "I don't believe it, you have more strength than me?" The terrifying momentum, centered on Hokage and Tsunade, burst in all directions, and purple and gold chakras swirled around, forming a whirlwind of purple and gold mixed. Rumble. The stone platform cracked. The ground on which the two were standing also cracked. Sarutobi Hinata, who had just returned home, had just sat down when he received news from the Dark Ninja. Tsunade and Hokage again? Sarutobi Biwako was originally still complaining that Sarutobi has often worked overtime recently. The eldest son is preparing to graduate, and the youngest son Sarutobi Asuma is also entering ninja school this year, and Sarutobi Hinata has no time to pay attention to his two sons. Then, the ape flew away again. Sarutobi Biwako shook his head helplessly. Maybe overtime is Hokage's fate. At the same time, Konoha White Fang and Bufeng Shuimen, who had just sent off Tuanzong and returned to the village, also saw the purple-gold tornado that suddenly appeared from the training ground. "What's that?" "Go over and take a look." In the training ground, Kushina had already retreated another 10 meters. "I can't see what happened to Hokage and Tsunade inside the chakra whirlwind." Now Kushina regretted it in his heart, and he shouldn't have proposed to break his wrist. What is the difference between this and fighting? I saw the purple chakra on Ye Feng's body, rolling up like a boil and rushing into the air. At the same time, countless branches and vines emerged from Kushina's feet, forming a wall in front of Kushina. Ye was single-minded, and while following Tsunade to break his wrist, he was still protecting Kushina. "Humph, count you qualified and know how to protect Kushina." Tsunade roared, and the desire to fight that had been immersed in for the past 2 years was instantly ignited by Ye Feng. The golden chakra also soared straight into the sky, and the wind swept the clouds. Bang! The huge chakra scattered in the air, and the heavy pressure actually collapsed the land around the two of them. Bang! 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 One big hole after another has formed all around. Kushina? Kushina looked back and saw that it was Bufeng Shuimen and Shimu Shuamao coming. What the hell is going on here? Watergate frowned, looking at the two figures of one purple and one gold that were faintly not clear on both sides of the stone platform, and was stunned for a moment. "Night Maple? That woman is..." Kiki Shuamao next to him said, "It's Tsunade." "Tsunade-sama?" Watergate's eyes widened. Tsunade was Konoha Sanshinu, who was also on a par with his master. And it seems that Ye Feng still has an advantage. Shimu Shuamao frowned. Ye Feng's strength exceeded his imagination. His own assassination technique can be said to be the first in Konoha, but with strength alone, he is inferior to Tsunade. But Ye in front of him was already ahead of Tsunade. Is the blood succession limit so strong after awakening? The Thousand Hands clan is terrible. Ye actually broke his wrist with Tsunade and didn't fall behind? Watergate was hurt. He thought he could catch up with Ye Feng, but found that he seemed to be thrown farther away. Episode 32. At this moment, the ape flying sun slashed in. "Hey, what are you doing?" Before the words fell, Tsunade roared, gathered all his forces together, and suddenly pressed down. Rumble. A bang. A huge explosive force erupted, centered on Hokage and Tsunade. It's like countless explosives, exploding in an instant. Everyone's faces were paled by the sudden burst of light. Both Fengshiman's eyes widened, and he quickly blocked in front of Jioshinai. Of course, Ye Feng's reaction was faster, and he had already surrounded Jioshinai with the Mudu and Wood Ingot Wall and the Mudu Tree Boundary Wall. Ahem, what are you doing? Except for Jioshinai, the others were blown up to ashes. Even the ape flying sun chop is no exception. Looking at the two who were completely engulfed in the smoke of the explosion, Jioshinai suddenly found that her proposal was really not good. Ape flying sun chopper was also speechless. You guys just break your wrists, is it necessary? I won. The smoke gradually cleared, and Yuraki's hand pressed Tsunade's hand against the table made of boulders. The stone platform had been shattered, and the land beneath the two men was covered with radial cracks. You. Tsunade looked at Yuraki stunned, really couldn't believe that he had actually lost. Moreover, Ye Feng is still single-minded and distracted. Yuraki let go of Tsunade's hand and stood up, loosening his shoulders and arms. Ape flying sun chopper also looked surprised. Hokage won Tsunade? You must know that you are purely competing in strength, and you are not necessarily Tsunade's opponent. Ye Feng, this kid, is amazing. Chimu Shuama was silent. As for Watergate, it stood still. It's a bit hard to accept. Jioshinai hurriedly ran up. Night Maple. Are you okay? Ye Feng touched Jioshinai's head and said, it's okay. Jioshinai glared at Ikid, and quickly ran to Tsunade. Sister Tsunade, are you alright? It's okay, it's just that my hands are a little numb. Tsunade said lightly, shaking his head. Losing is losing, and Tsunade, as a generation of gambling monsters, is still willing to gamble and lose. Tsunadeheim, but our bet still counts. It's okay for me to say what Tsunade said. Let's say, what do you want me to do? I haven't thought of this yet, let's talk about it next time. Humph. Again this kid dares to propose something messy, I beat him to death. Then, Tsunade suddenly thought, can he beat him? Forget it, let's talk about it later. Tsunade didn't embarrass Yakid anymore afterwards, returned to the small courtyard, and took the initiative to pick up the bed and go to sleep on the sofa. For this reason, Jioshinai also glared at Ye Feng a few times. Uzumaki Mito also looked surprised when he learned that Hokage had won Tsunade. Tsunade actually lost, and sure enough, only the people of the Senju family can win the people of the Senju family. Early the next morning, Ye Feng was still in a wonderful sleep, but was woken up. What for? Juzanai. It turns out that Jioshinai usually asked you to get up, the benefits are good, boy. Ye Feng had not yet opened his eyes, and when he heard this voice, he immediately opened his eyes. How could it be Tsunade? Kushina followed Tsunade. Then, the voice of Uzumaki Mito came from outside. Hokage, get up, this morning, we're going to attend an extraordinary meeting of Konoha's high level. Konoha high-level ad hoc meeting? Ye Feng brushed his teeth while listening to Jioshinai's explanation. Because of Danzo's dismissal, Mito Minato, and Koharu's vacation, Konoha's administration caused a big shock. There will be a new batch of high-ranking officials, hence the Konoha administration. At the same time, there will also be a group of new blood to become the new high level. Oh, so we're going too? Yes. In this way, Ye Feng was taken to the meeting site, the administrative building. When I was at the door of the administration building, I also ran into Buofeng Shuemen and Jiraiya, whose face was still wrapped in bandages. Jiraiya also saw Uzumaki Mito, and quickly greeted, Uzumaki Mito-sama. Uzumaki Mito said strangely, Jiraiya, what's wrong with you? Jiraiya glanced at Tsunade, and said with a smile, it's okay, I accidentally hit a telephone pole last night, let's go in. Ye Feng originally thought that the whole village was going to go, but when he went, he found that all the people present were famous figures from Konoha village. The high-level officials of various departments, the heads of various ethnic groups, the 3 shinobi of Konoha, and the White Fang of Konoha all participated. There are also outstanding ninjas of the younger generation, such as Hokage, Ye Feng Shueimon, Uchiha Fugaku, and the first generation of Inuga Butterfly. Hokage followed Uzumaki Mito and Tsunade into the meeting site, which immediately attracted everyone's attention and discussion. The man who followed Uzumaki Mito and Tsunade, who else, was not Hokage. Many high-level officials, as well as the heads of various ethnic groups, were all seeing Ye Feng Jinren for the first time. He's Ye Feng? He brought down the gang of 3? But looking at his appearance, there is nothing special. Episode 33, Ye Feng's group was arranged in the first row, which also surprised Ye Feng. But think about it, I represent the Thousand Hands family, and naturally, I feel very normal. After all, the Senju clan is the #1 clan in Konoha, at least in terms of reason. Everyone's eyes were on Hokage, who was sitting next to Uzumaki Mito. Ye Feng could also hear the whispers of everyone. He's Ye Feng? He came too? Has there been any news that who will sit in the top 2 positions in the administration department? Did Naruto-sama intend to reorganize the roots? In the anime, except for Danzo alone, there are no other clansmen of the Shimura clan, as well as the eldest son of Sarutobi Hinata, and the eldest brother of Sarutobi Asuma, all came. Listening to Jyoshirnai explain that the scene, in addition to the 3 major clans of Senju, Hinata, and Uchiha, the most famous are the Sarutobi clan and the Shimura clan, which were famous in the Warring States period. Among them, Naruto-sama's father, Sarutobi Sasuke, was a famous ninja at that time and one of the founders who co-founded Konoha. Most of the people who were able to enter the venue were people from the 38th major family. Ye Feng listened to Jyoshirnai's words, and then looked at everyone present, and probably understood. The 38 students accepted by the second-generation Senju represent the 38 families of Konoha. The so-called Will of Fire is also about blood. You are not a member of the 38 major families, and it is basically impossible to inherit the Will of Fire. The successor of the Will of Fire probably came out of these 38 major families and grew up, that is, to become the top of Konoha. A few lucky people, like Buofeng Shuemen, can become Hokage, but they can't do it with battle merits. The wife is the pillar force of the Nine Tails and becomes the spokesperson of the Uzumaki clan, and is obedient enough to obey the opinions of the 3 generations and the elders to be qualified to inherit the Will of Fire. Seeing that Naruto Uzumaki was surnamed Uzumaki, he knew that Watergate had chosen at that time. And Chimu Shuamao, who is of equal strength, is also a prominent military meritorious man, but the meritorious lord, who is also a competitor of the 4th generation of Hokage, was politically murdered. It can be seen that the Will of Fire is not something you can inherit if you want to. Ye Feng thought to himself that if he hadn't awakened the Thousand Hands family's blood succession limit, I'm afraid he wouldn't have entered Konoha's high-level society like this. When Sarutobi entered the conference room under the support of a group of Konoha ninjas, the conference room immediately fell silent. Everyone looked at the ape-flying sun. Under everyone's gaze, the 3 generations of Hokage walked to the podium and scanned it for a week before saying aloud, "Let me tell you the good news first. In the first week that Shimura Tuanzang led the group to Yunin Village, there was an important breakthrough. Yunin Village has signed a 20-year peace agreement with it. We and Yunin Village will maintain peace for at least 20 years. This is an important milestone in our great revival of Konoha, on the road to peaceful rejuvenation." As soon as the words of the ape-flying sun chop came out, the audience was in an uproar. Many people showed a look of joy. In the past few years, from war to peace, everyone knows the preciousness of this peaceful and beautiful peace. If the most militant Yunin Village is willing to make peace with Konoha, then Konoha can continue to be peaceful. The clansmen of the Shimura clan are full of pride. This is the light of our Shimura, the darkness of Konoha. Even if he was wronged, suffered a black pot, and went away, he also made meritorious contributions to Konoha. Ye Feng was also stunned. Tuanzo did not go undercover, but to be an embassy? It's only been a few days, so soon to pave the way for your return? It's really a politician, and it's really 6 playing politics. Uzumaki Mito also frowned, but did not say anything. Uzumaki Mito has never liked power, otherwise, the Senju clan and the Uzumaki clan would not be so miserable, and all the men were hung up. After Sarutobi announced the exciting news, the official topic of the meeting began. Personnel transfer in the executive branch. Sarutobi Hinata said that there will be a group of young talents who will enter the upper echelons of Konoha. Ye Feng listened a little, and after some appointment, the highest chief of the administration department was temporarily served by Ape-Flying Sun's old classmate, Akimichi Takekase. Uzumaki Mito, and the head of the Hyuga family as a special advisor. Tsunade becomes the supreme chief of the medical department, and Orochimaru becomes the deputy. Jiraiya became the principal of the ninja school, and Watergate became the vice principal. As soon as Konoha Sanshin returned, he immediately inserted into various important positions. The Uchiha family was still in charge of the Konoha guards, but due to the dissolution of the roots, the powers of the Konoha guards were further expanded. With the appointment of one person after another, Ye Feng thought to himself, he would not appoint himself to do anything. This idea had just appeared, and the ape on the podium flew into the sun, glanced at Ye Feng, and said lightly, Ye Feng, Shimo Shinobu, the mission of rescuing Jio Shinai is meritorious, and the illegal activities of the hidden roots of the regiment are meritorious, so he was promoted to special shainen, and arranged to be the vice principal of the ninja school. Episode 34. Ye Feng didn't expect that he would be arranged like this. Vice principal of ninja school? Such a big position? Ape Fei spoke on it, and Ye Feng did not plan to refuse in person, just don't go when the time comes. Sarutobi ended with a speech of will of fire. Roughly wherever there are leaves, the fire burns, the shadow of the fire shines on the village, and new leaves sprout. It means that young people are the hope of the future, and the older generation should trust and guard them. The sacrifices of the older generation are not meaningless, but will inspire the young to become pillars of the future. No wonder the three generations can say this passage so fluently. When did it turn out to be taken out and said? After the meeting, Sarutobi also patted Ye Feng's shoulder and said, "Good job, I believe you can do it." Wufeng Shuimen also came over and said, "Ye Feng, we will be colleagues in the future. I don't think I'm well suited to be a principal." Tsunade suddenly rolled his eyes. "Okay, don't be so stupid, okay? The vice principal, that is, the teacher, understands no, huh? Wouldn't it, such a routine?" Listening to Jio Shinai's explanation, I knew that in the school, the ordinary teacher was one level higher, that is, the vice principal. The current vice principal has more than 10 people, and he is actually a senior teacher. Ye Feng's epiphany was speechless. Want him to be a teacher? Not interested. However, when Night Maple wanted to be a salted fish, Uzumaki Mito talked to Night Maple about it. In Mito's room in Uzumaki. "Ye Feng, what do you think of Jio Shinai?" This sentence suddenly came when Ye Feng was defenseless, which really caught Ye Feng off guard. "Grandma Mito, Jio Shinai is good-looking, and..." Uzumaki Mito waved his hand. "Forget it, let's say it bluntly." After a pause, Uzumaki Mito suddenly said seriously, "Ye Feng, you are the last bloodline of my Senju clan. If you want, you can treat this place as your own home. We are all your relatives. I'm wondering, can I entrust Jio Shinai to you?" When Ye Feng heard this, his eyes immediately lit up. I didn't expect Uzumaki Mito to be so direct. Akido didn't say secret words, and Yokai nodded sharply and said, "Okay, Grandma Mito." "I do." Uzumaki Mito snorted and said, "You sleep all day, what are you willing to do? Actually, you can also see that Jio Shinai has a good impression of you. So, if you can really come together with Jio Shinai, I am the first to agree." "I just don't know if you mean that." Ye Feng immediately said, "Of course there is. I love Jio Shinai." For opportunities, Ye Feng never flinched. Uzumaki Mito nodded in satisfaction. "If you want to be with Jio Shinai, you can't hang like this." Actually, this time the position arrangement was proposed by me with the 3 generations of Hokage. Yikid was stunned for a moment, and understood what Uzumaki Mito meant. "Good job, you will become a Hokage in the future." Suddenly, Ye Feng slowly spoke, "So Grandma Mito means that if I marry Jio Shinai, I can become a Hokage?" Uzumaki Mito nodded slightly. Ye Feng suddenly smiled. "Grandma Mito, is this a dowry?" "No, you are originally a member of the Senju clan, and then with Jio Shinai, after I hand over the 9 tails to Jio Shinai in the future, you will definitely be Hokage. At that time, no one will oppose you, because you have strength, and you are a member of the Thousand Hands family, and you have married the 9 tails man Julie. Understand?" The corners of Ye Feng's mouth turned up slightly, and he said in a deep voice, "Grandma Mito, I don't want to be a Hokage." Uzumaki Mito was stunned for a moment. This guy won't be too lazy to be incorrigible. Yikid continued, "I want to help Jio Shinai become a Hokage. Her dream when she was a child was to become Hokage, and I always remember helping her fulfill her dream." Ye Feng's words made Uzumaki Mito's eyes light up. "Really?" Uzumaki Mito immediately smiled. "You want to become Konoha's first female Hokage. The difficulty is far higher than if you were the Hokage. You said you had such an idea, so at least show me what you plan to do, right?" At this time, Jio Shinai's voice sounded outside. "Grandma Mito, Yokai, it's time to eat." Uzumaki Mito smiled and said, "Let's go. The easiest way to make men feel responsible is to start a family and have children." She believed that today's words would make Ye Feng serious. In fact, Uzumaki Mito has not fully said all her thoughts. Her idea is that within these 2 years, get married and have children as soon as possible, and the bloodline of the Senju family can be continued, then it will be good. My own body can still support 5 years, or even 10 years. In this way, Yokai became the vice principal of the ninja school, in fact, an instructor. Recently, the rule of the 5 ninja states has begun to waver, and the borders of various countries and ninja villages have begun to have constant disputes, frictions, and conflicts. The ninjas of Konoha village have also begun to go out on missions in large numbers, and now the village continues to have a large number of new forces, and they also need ninjas who can guide the newborn ones. As a result, Hokage became an instructor at the ninja school. As soon as he arrived at the ninja school, Hokage was assigned a task. Ye Feng, you just came, we are in a class, you bring a class of graduates. Ding, according to the current situation of the host, give 3 choices. Option 1, choose the 3rd class, Coach Mat Kai, Ebisu, Moonlight Blast, reward, A-level ninjutsu 8-gate Dunjia formation. Option 2, choose the 5th class, Coach Ape Flying Asma, Sunset Red, and the same, reward, A-level ninjutsu 1000 hands kill. Option 3, choose the 7th class, Coach Kakashi Kiki, Abito, Rin no Era, reward, Supreme Pack. Episode 35. Bo Feng Shuimen looked at Ye Feng and said, Ye Feng Kuan, you choose first. Ye Feng smiled and said, then I'm welcome, I'll choose the 7th class. The will of 7 is really everywhere. The 7th class of this year is the class that changed the world. Abito, who was originally the weakest, became Madara's tool man, and once became the big boss of Hokage. And Kakashi is also an important person. Ye Feng suddenly thought, will his arrival also change the historical trajectory of the 7th class? If Abito hadn't been seriously injured in the Battle of Shinmibi Bridge, would he still have gone that way? If Ye Feng can control the 3 tails in Rin's body, will that prevent the tragedy from happening? And the suicide of Konoha White Fang, and so on. Thinking about it like this, Ye Feng felt a little interesting. Bo Feng Shuimen sighed when he saw Ye Feng choose the 7th class. He originally liked the 7th class the most. Hearing that Ye Feng was going to choose the 7th class, he felt an inexplicable loss in his heart. And it was as if something had been lost. But Bo Feng Shuimen still nodded and said, okay, then let's go to the 7th class. Ye Feng asked rhetorically, what about you? Bo Feng Shuimen smiled and said, it's okay with me, I'll pick the last one, you go to get your students first. By the way, this professor's guide is for you, you can take a look first. Ye Feng took a copy of the new Shinobi Professor's Guide and casually let it go. Open volume, Will of Fire. Where the leaves fly, the fire endures. The fire will continue to illuminate the village and allow new leaves to sprout. Ye Feng suddenly rolled his eyes, and looked back at the author of the cover, Ape Flying Sunchop, okay. This sentence should be the words of the ape flying sun, which hung on his lips every day, and wrote this sentence on the tree, and the whole village was popularized. This thought work is really good. Ye Feng flipped down, the first section is about being a teacher. First of all, you must have the ability to teach students, and secondly, you must have an inclusive heart and noble morality, so that you can lead by example to influence students to become better. To be a murderous ninja is also to be virtuous, which is also a bit of a bull. Then the second section begins, how to train qualified students as a teacher by organizing various tasks. The so-called qualified students are those who become lower shinobi, middle shinobi, or even upper shinobi, and can go to the battlefield. Whether it is the land of fire or Konoha, a batch of fresh blood is needed to join in order to maintain their current status. This is also the purpose of ninjas. First of all, the first task is to organize 3 students in his class to carry out the task of wild survival exercise. Before the task begins, remember to emphasize the difficulties of the task to the students. For example, out of 30 graduates, only 10 will be recognized as shinobi, and the rest will be sent back to school to take the exam next year. Get students serious and don't slack. The wilderness survival exercise is to go to the wild and let your students, within a limited time, such as before 12 o'clock, grab their own bells to cultivate students' ninjutsu use and teamwork. At the same time, through the teacher's display of strength, students can have a certain understanding of the strength of ninjas who have been on the battlefield. You can use people who can't grab the bell and have no food to eat at noon to stimulate the fighting spirit of students. First, complete the wilderness survival exercise to ensure that these graduates carry out their tasks and have the ability to protect themselves when they go to battle. Then start with D-level tasks, C-level tasks. This is the process for veterans of Konoha village to lead newbies. Ye Feng looked at how this process looked so familiar. Let's go see them first. Ye Feng stood outside the classroom door when he heard a soft girl's voice. Oh, Abito, why did you say our teacher hasn't come yet? Lin, I don't know. This voice should be Uchiha with soil. Huh, maybe you're also helping your grandmother cross the street? Kakashi, what do you mean? Without looking, Kakashi began to despise Abito again. Seriously, the excuse of helping grandma cross the street really sucks. Abito always used this reason to treat everyone as mentally retarded, and it was no wonder that Kakashi despised it. Ahem, hello, I'm your instructor. As soon as Ye Feng came in, he looked at the 3 children in front of him and was immediately stunned. This is a little different from what he imagined. The little loli and little brother in front of you are also too young. Do you feel like elementary school students? Up to 5th or 6th grade. Noera Lin said very obediently for the first time, "Hello teacher." She thought to herself, this teacher is a little handsome. Then Obito, who was black-haired and wearing goggles, glanced at Yikid and pouted, "Hello teacher." Obito thought to himself, this guy looks a little stupid like Kakashi. Finally, Kakashi, who wore a mask and only showed his eyes, said, "Hello teacher." Ye Feng nodded and said, "Well, then, let's introduce ourselves first." The three said in unison, "Teacher, you come first." Episode 36. Me? My name is Night Maple. It's your turn. Then, Ye Feng opened the new Shinobi Professor's Guide and said as it said, talk about what you like, what you hate, or what dreams you have, what interests you have, and so on. The three looked at Ye Feng and said, "Teacher, you come first." Ye Feng was suddenly speechless. "I'm a teacher, or are you a teacher? It's your turn to say, starting from left to right." "I'll come first." Obito held up the goggles and said with a proud smile, "My name is Uchiha Obito, and my favorite is. The most annoying thing is war. The dream is to become Hokage. End this war, let our family, let the people in the village, recognize my existence." Kakashi burst out laughing, "Just like you as a Hokage? Help the grandmother cross the road, and you can't be a fire shadow for 100 years. Obito was suddenly furious. "Kakashi, what do you mean? Are you amazing? I'm the Uchiha Obito of the Uchiha clan. Sooner or later I will surpass you, after my Sharingan eyes open." Kakashi looked at Obito like an idiot. "The people of the Uchiha clan are all elites, right? You don't need to write will eyes, it should be very strong." Obito gritted his teeth and said, "What do you say?" Lin hurriedly said, Okay, don't argue, the teacher is watching." Ye Feng looked at them with a curious face. There was a taste, it was really double love and double killing. "It's your turn, Rin Noera, right?" Lin straightened up and said, "Yes, sensei, my name is Rin Noera. What I like the most is cake, the most annoying is curry rice. My dream is to be a medical ninja and save lives on the battlefield." Ye Feng nodded and said, "Well, you can. This little loli will indeed be the treatment of the 7th class in the future. Without this little loli, I am afraid that Obito and Kakashi would have hung up long ago." Noera Lin nodded sharply and looked at Ye Feng, feeling that this Shikid teacher was not bad. Then, Yakid looked at Kakashi, who at this time was small and cute, and looked arrogant. Yokaid couldn't help but ravage Kakashi's sky-high white hair. "Kakashi, it's your turn." Kakashi angrily pushed Yokaid's hand away. "Sensei, you messed up my hairstyle. Now that you know my name, I don't need to say anything." Ye Feng looked at the three little fart children with different expressions in front of him, and suddenly thought of a Hokage Eternal Mysteries. Who does Lin like? Both sides said that their side was full of ironclad evidence, and Kishimoto's old thief did not make it clear, and there has always been an argument. Now, Ye Feng looked at the three little fart children in front of him and knew the answer. That is, these three little fart children are less than 10 years old. Understand a hammer love? Ahem, it's okay, everyone knows each other. You also know me. Again, my name is Ye Feng, your future instructor. That's the end of the self-introduction, starting tomorrow. All three looked at Ye Feng. Teacher, what task? Survival drills in the wild. Obito immediately said happily, when we were in school, we often did drills. Ye Feng smiled and said, this exercise is different, because your opponent is me. Teacher, you? Teacher, you said something strange. Ye Feng smiled hee hee, yes, this exercise, you have to be mentally prepared. The elimination rate is more than 66%, among the 30 graduates of your class, only 10 can pass at most, and the rest will be sent back to school and remodeled, understand? Obito's eyes widened, Rin was speechless, and Kakashi was silent. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, Konoha Forest, wait at the gate of the ninja third base, don't be late. As soon as Ye Feng's words fell, the person had disappeared, leaving a stunned trio. Lin wiped her eyes and said, Teacher Ye Feng is gone? Groove, it's like magic. Obito was also very surprised. Kakashi said with disdain, fool, this is the instantaneous technique. Kakashi, who do you say is a fool? Lin saw that the two were about to quarrel again, and quickly separated the two again. Don't argue, think about what to do tomorrow. Obito pouted and said, it must have been the teacher who bluffed us, how could it be so exaggerated and eliminate everyone? I didn't lie to you. Obito jumped up. Ah, teacher, how do you look like a ghost, haunted? Ye Feng laughed and said, Obito, you need to strengthen your guts, I forgot to remind you just now, don't forget to bring your ninja tools, and don't eat breakfast, otherwise don't blame me for not reminding you if you vomit. As soon as the words fell, Ye Feng slammed and turned into a piece of wood. With a look of surprise, Rin picked up the wood that had fallen on the ground. Kakashi said in a deep voice, this is a stand-in technique. What suddenly appeared just now was Teacher Ye Feng's stand-in. Who do you think Lin likes? Episode 37, Ye Feng, you came back so early? Ye Feng nodded and gave Jiao Xinai a touch of the head to kill. Nasty. Jiao Xinai shyly pushed away Ye Feng's demon hand and said, have you seen your student? Hokage said as he changed his shoes, well, one is called Obito, one is called Rin, and the last one is called Kakashi. Kakashi, I know, is a teenage genius, son of the White Fang. Ye Feng was suddenly curious, you actually know? Of course I know, you think I don't know anything? Jiao Xinai was like a kitten, standing obediently in front of Ye Feng. Let's go inside. Ye Feng naturally took Jiao Xinai's little hand. Jiao Xinai was a little shy, but did not break free. What about the other two? One is from the Uchiha family, and the other is from the surname Noera. Ye Feng, your students are all very good, a son of White Fang, a member of the Uchiha family. Well, it's pretty strong. Ye Feng nodded, and as soon as he came in, he heard Tsunade say with a big grin, hey, boy, you haven't proposed to Jiao Xinai yet, don't be pretentious, okay? Jiao Xinai retracted his hand shyly. Ye Feng really wanted to beat Tsunade. Tsunade said again, how can we say that Jiao Xinai is also the next person of the Uzumaki clan, Julie, and her other half, how can I say that I have to endure it? Ye Kid suddenly smiled, and at this time Uzumaki Mito walked out. Ye Feng, he is already a Shangnan, were you sleeping during the meeting yesterday? Tsunade's eyes widened, what? Did he put up with it? Our rules in Konoha, when didn't it come step by step, he hasn't even advanced to the middle ninja, how can he advance to the upper ninja? The 3 generations of adults agreed. Uzumaki Mito ignored Tsunade, looked at Yorikide and said, come in and eat. While eating, Tsunade was still indignant, saying that Yokaide had broken Konoha's rules for years. Ye Feng suddenly smiled and said, rules are established by people, and naturally people break them, this is not normal. Tsunade still looked unhappy, and at this time, the big snake pill suddenly appeared. Tsunade, hurry to the hospital, there is an emergency. When Tsunade heard this, he immediately left without eating. Saving people is always the first priority of the medical team. Ye Feng's ears moved, and he vaguely heard Orochimaru say to Tsunade that something had happened over there in the Mist-Hidden Village. Mist-Hidden Village? Ye Kid immediately thought of the 3-tailed incident that led to Rin's death. At that time it was Madara who conspired with the 3 generations of Mizukage to inject the 3 tails into Rin's body, turn Rin into a 3-tailed human pillar force, and then send Rin back to Konoha, intending to let Rin destroy Konoha. This plan was killed by Kakashi himself by killing Rin. This had to make Ye Feng think of the revenant of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Madara. Just when Ye Feng was slightly distracted, Jiao Xinai clipped a piece of meat to Ye Feng. Ye Feng, this is your first time leading a class, you have to think hard about how to train them tomorrow. Ye Feng nodded and said, I know, Jiao Xinai, but I thought in my heart, I am afraid that it is the beginning of the Third Ninja World War. Actually, it has arrived, but not many people have found it. Otherwise, there is no need for children like Kakashi, Obito, and Rin to grow up quickly. The 20-year peace agreement signed between Tuanzang and Yunin may have stunned the eyes of many people. But Ye Feng didn't believe that such a peace agreement would work. The next day, Ye Feng was still sleeping, and he was suddenly woken up again. What for? Ye Feng wiped his eyes, his sleepy eyes were hazy, but he still took a closer look at the comber, so as not to recognize the wrong person. It's Jiao Xinai. Jiao Xinai crossed his waist angrily and said, Ye Feng, how many times have I called you, are you still sleeping? What time is it, and you're going to be late for the agreed time with your student? Ye Feng yawned and said, what time is it, no hurry. After washing his face and coming back, Jiao Xinai was still urging Ye Feng, hurry up, I'm really going to be late. Jiao Xinai didn't know why Ye Feng was so lazy. However, Ye Feng looked at Jiao Xinai and suddenly grabbed Jiao Xinai's hand. What for? Jiao Xinai suddenly blushed. Ye Kid thought about it last night, mainly at dinner. Tsunade's words touched Ye Feng. The girl is thin-skinned, and he, as a man, should take the initiative. Jiao Xinai, I like you, will you marry me? Jiao Xinai suddenly blushed, and looked at Ye Feng with beautiful eyes and said, are you proposing? Ye Feng was stunned when he heard Jiao Xinai's words. Isn't this a marriage proposal? Jiao Xinai looked at Ye Feng's silent appearance, and his heart was huffing. This would. Did you propose like that? People propose marriage with rings, at least a bouquet of flowers. I promised him this, wouldn't it be too frivolous? Ye Feng pondered and said, well, Jiao Xinai, I'm just proposing to you now, promise me, okay? Jiao Xinai looked at Ye Feng's appearance, couldn't help but smile, poked Ye Feng's arm and said, you would. Can't you just send a flower? Ye Feng's eyes lit up and patted his head. Oh, look at my head, it's stupid. As soon as the words fell, there was a bang behind him, a doppelganger appeared, and immediately ran outside the house. After a while, the doppelganger rushed back with a bouquet of roses. Shinai smiled, took the rose, looked at Ye Feng, and said coquettishly, "Humph, I promised you." Then he said, "But you have to get Grandma Mito's permission, she is my elder." At this time Uzumaki Mito walked out of the room and said with a smile, "I agree." Shina walked up to Uzumaki Mito coquettishly, grabbed Uzumaki Mito, and said, "Grandma Mito, you eavesdropped on us." Uzumaki Mito looked at Shina and Yokai lovingly and said, "Seeing that the two of you can walk together, I, as an elder, am really gratified. Your marriage is so decided." Shinai suddenly lowered his head shyly, but he didn't expect that he would marry Ye Feng like this. Ye Feng's heart was also suddenly filled with a special joy. Is this love? At the same time, there is an indescribable sense of responsibility. He's going to marry his daughter-in-law. No matter what, don't give up. Suddenly, Shinai exclaimed softly, "Ye Feng, you left quickly, you are going to be late." Episode 38. In the Konoha forest, at the gate of the third base of the ninja, 3 children sat in one place, looking in the direction of Konoha village, and had been waiting for an hour. "Rin, we've all been waiting for an hour, this nasty guy hasn't come yet." Lin also puffed out her mouth and said, "Yes, it's really untrustworthy." Kakashi glanced at Obito and said, "It's not reliable than you, a guy who is late every day." Obito was suddenly upset. "Kakashi, what do you say? Oh, you guys seem to be full of energy." Ye Feng was in a very happy mood today, with a smile on his face. Obito, Rin and Kakashi looked at Yokai's smile, but were frightened. "Old, good teacher. Well, it's good, it looks like you're full of energy, so let's go in." The 3 of them all slandered Ye Feng in their hearts, and this teacher looked too unreliable. In the Konoha forest, Yokai is explaining the rules to Kakashi, Obito, and Rin. "That is, we just need to grab the bell from you, teacher, even if we win, right?" Ye Feng nodded and said, "It's like this, whoever performs the worst won't have to eat lunch." "Huh?" Obito screamed, with a sense of foreboding. "Then, you have 2 hours. So let's get started." Before the words fell, a sharp sound of bitterness cutting through the air immediately sounded. It was Kakashi who threw out the kunai. "Ugh." Ye Feng pinched Kuwu with his hand, and said with a smile, "It's not bad." After speaking, Kakashi had disappeared and appeared behind Yokai, and Kumu rushed towards Yokai. Obito was stunned, and his body trembled slightly. And Lin next to her covered her small mouth, her eyes were light. However, in the next second, Night Maple suddenly appeared behind Kakashi. Kakashi's eyes widened. Instantaneous technique? Without reacting, Kakashi was immediately grabbed by his left leg and hung upside down. Kakashi did not give up, grabbing the bell around Yokai's waist with his hand, while the kunai of his other hand was also inserted into Yokai. "Not bad, don't be afraid." Yokai turned his head sideways, dodged Kakashi's kunai, and threw Kakashi out directly. Oops. Kakashi smashed directly on Obito, and the two rolled on the ground together. What is a ninja? You two are watching the hilarious one. Do you want to be a ninja cheerleader, specifically cheering up? When Rin heard Ye Feng's words, she was stunned for a moment, and reacted, "Kakashi, Obito, we can't go it alone, we have to cooperate together." Ye Feng looked at Lin with satisfaction, nodded and said, "Girls are still smarter." When Lin heard Ye Feng's praise, a smile appeared on her face. Kakashi stood up, patted the dust on his body, and fell silent. Obito also got up, and couldn't help but pout, but there are only 2 bells. How do we work together? We are desperate together, but there is no one to eat. Lin immediately said, "We can share it and eat." Ye Feng looked at Rin appreciatively, the leader of the 7th class. Kakashi is powerful and arrogant, looks down on his teammates, and always wants to do it himself. And Obito is inferior and cowardly, always complaining about the current situation and not thinking about how to solve the problem. Only Rin was able to join the entire squad together at this time. Then, come again, I don't need any ninjutsu, let's grab the bell. However, after 2 hours, Obito was so tired that he couldn't stand up straight, and pouted, "Teacher, you are specialized in physical skills. The 3 of them in these 2 hours, don't say grab the bell, even if they haven't touched it." Obito felt that Ye Feng would not specialize in physical arts, so he didn't need ninjutsu. On the other side, Kakashi was kicked off again, smashed to the ground, and got up again. Idiot. Obito suddenly became angry. Did I say something wrong? He's Senju Ikid, the successor of the original Hokage bloodline. The original Hokage is a physical specialty? Are you here to be funny? Kakashi's series of words smashed Obito. What the? 1,000 hands Night Maple? Is our teacher so good? Rin, as a child of a civilian family, originally did not know the identity of Night Maple, and hearing Kakashi say this, her eyes were full of adoration when she looked at Night Feng. The original Hokage, in the hearts of everyone in Konoha, is the supreme ninja god. As his bloodline inheritor, he is naturally also high. Ye Feng cried and laughed. Wait, my name is Ye Feng, not Qianqiu. Kakashi was dumbfounded. Sensei, aren't you from the Senju family? Ye Feng smiled and said, why do children care so much? Just call me teacher Ye Feng in the future. Just as Night Maple was speaking, another Kakashi suddenly appeared behind Night Kid. Doppelganger. Both Rin and Obito had happy faces. Seeing that Kakashi was about to grab the bell, the next second, Rin and Obito's eyes were about to pop out, and Kakashi next to them slammed and disappeared. This Kakashi who spoke was a doppelganger, while the real body was pressed to the ground by Hokage. Ah, when did you use the doppelganger technique? Yes, you will be a doppelganger at a young age. Hokage quickly let go of Kakashi and said with a smile, well done, you are a class first, and then a ninja. Only as a team can reduce casualties in real missions, wars. Strength is important, but teamwork can make 1 + 1 greater than 2. Complementary strengths can often turn the tide of war. On the contrary, the shortcomings of the team often become the breakthrough point of the enemy. For example, Ye Feng said, and a small tree root suddenly appeared under the feet of the three. Kakashi's eyes widened, and he immediately jumped back. Be careful. Lin also retreated as soon as possible. Only Obito had a puzzled face. What? Before Obito could react, he was dragged to Ye Feng's face by a small tree root. Ugh. Ye Feng squatted down, flicked Obito's forehead, smiled, and said, look, this is the team's shortcoming. Shortcomings are often fatal, such as. Now, you are on a mission, you have secrets on your body, and you have been arrested with soil. Rin, Kakashi, tell your secrets. Otherwise, Obito will be dead. Ah, Kakashi rolled his eyes. Ye Feng smiled and said, I'm just using an analogy. At this time, you must make a painful choice. To give up a companion for the sake of the village, or to give up this mission for the sake of this companion, will cause the village to suffer huge losses and more people to die. Obito was ashamed and embarrassed, and he was still hard-mouthed. Teacher, this is not fair, you take advantage of my lack of attention to strike. Moreover, you said that you don't need ninjutsu, and you also use ninjutsu. Kakashi, idiot. Ye Feng smiled and said, is there anything fair and unfair on the battlefield? Only those who survived, and lost heroes. Remember the hero monument at the door? Those are all dead heroes, put a name on it. Do you think they will say before they die, it's not fair, and the enemy will take advantage of my lack of attention? The intelligence is obviously lower forbearance, how can it be more powerful than upper patience? The intelligence is fake, so I died? When everyone heard Ye Feng's words, their faces changed. Obito, if you don't want to be a burden to your teammates, then practice more, don't always think about opening the chakra. Others usually use 5 hours of training, you use 10 hours of training, others use 10 hours of training, you should use 20 hours of training. Originally the talent is not good, don't immerse yourself in your fantasy all day. War is far more brutal than you think. And it's not far from you. If you don't want to die, don't want to drag down your companions, and don't want to bring shame to your family, then practice hard. Then, Ye Feng cried when he saw Obito. He scolded the boss and cried? Episode 39, Konoha Village, a training ground in Uchiha's territory. As the setting sun shines, a child is covered in sweat and practicing sealing. Doppelganger. Bang. After a cloud of white smoke came out, nothing appeared. Ah. Failed again. Obito scratched his head and yelled. Why can teacher Ye Feng's doppelganger technique be fake? Why can Kakashi's doppelganger be so proficient? Why don't you succeed? Today, Ye Feng's words, give him a drink. He fantasized about becoming a genius, a blockbuster, becoming a Hokage, and being proud of the ninja world. However, the truth is that he is a man with no talent. He thought about deceiving himself, but today, he couldn't deceive. And from time to time, people from the Uchiha clan cast strange eyes. That's Obito, training so hard. It's a pity that my parents died early. Without the teaching of parents, it is still a lot worse. I heard that he came back crying today. I'm afraid I failed, and I have to go back to the furnace to reform. There was a burst of discussion, accompanied by some disdainful glances. Obito's shoulders trembled slightly, and he roared angrily, I'm not a waste. With a wave of hatred, he returned home with soil. Grandma greeted her, bring soil, come back, let's eat, don't eat. Obito closed the door directly and couldn't leave the room, and began to frantically push-ups. 197, 198, 199, 200. Obito gritted his teeth and continued to do it, the sweat of his whole body dripped on the ground, and the ground was wet. In the end, the whole person smashed to the ground, but what Ye Feng said sounded in his mind. You, drag down companions, bring shame on the family. Obito gritted his teeth and got up to continue practicing. At Noera Rin's house, her parents said with a smile on their faces, "Rin, say so, you are putting up with it now?" Lin nodded and said, "Yes, that Night Maple teacher is actually quite good. By the way, Dad, Mom, have you heard of Night Maple teacher? Night Maple?" "No, what's wrong, Lin?" Lin held her chin with her small hand, and Ye Feng's hearty smile appeared in her mind. "Listen to Kakashi, Yokaide-sensei is a powerful character." "Awesome character? Then you have to study more with teacher Ye Feng." Lin nodded obediently. Kakashi was at home, eating instant noodles by himself, and his father was not home today, so he should be busy with official business. In his mind, he recalled what Ye Feng had said to them at that time. This Ye Feng teacher is not reliable, or is he too indulgent with students? It is really amazing that Uchiha can pass the level with a skill like Obito. At this time, Ye Feng was eating, and in addition to Uzumaki Minato and Kushina, there were also Tsunade. As soon as he sat down, Tsunade complained that the medical department was too busy and almost did not have time to sleep. Then he talked about the riot in the Mist-Hidden Village, which caused many low-level ninjas over there to be injured or even killed. The many undercover agents arranged by Konoha over there also fled because of this riot. Many died directly on the road. Those who were able to return to Konoha were all seriously injured. So these days, Tsunade is too busy to sleep. Yoriki pricked up his ears and listened to these news that he could barely see the information above Konoha. Mist-Hidden Village, the most famous is the Blood Mist, but Ye Feng doesn't know why it is called Blood Mist. Is it simply his own people killing his own people? Tsunade gave the answer. Kirihide Village was originally like us in Konoha, everyone is equal, but after 3 generations of Mizukage came to power, the policy guidelines have gradually changed. The indigenous noble clans of this village, as well as the various Shainin families who created military merits in the war, became the highest-ranking nobles. Those small families that were annexed by the Misty Hidden Village, including the blood succession limit, ordinary families, became civilians. These civilians, performing the most dangerous tasks, are purely tools, not even dogs. As for the Blood Mist no Sato, that means that the lower ninja exam of the Mist Hidden Village must kill one of his classmates. Of course, this is also an exam that only commoners will go through, and nobles do not need it. Then those civilians are not satisfied and they are about to riot. Then, I heard that it was the upper echelons of Wuin Village who sent 7 ninja swords to bloodily suppress it, and the entire Wuin Village was shrouded in bloody terror. The 7 shinobi swords. Ye Feng finally heard the knowledge he understood. However, the 7 people of the ninja knife mentioned by Tsunade are Loquat Juzo, Watermelon Mountain Puffer Ghost, Kuriki Shot Weshiramaru, Tsukusa Wild Baitman, No Pair Shinhachi, Black Hoe Thunder Tooth, and Ghost Lantern Senkaku. Ye Feng didn't know any of them. How come there is no mahogany anymore, not chopped in it? Then, Tsunade added, now the teacher is planning to send several teams of ninjas to the vicinity of the village of Kurihi, and it should be Jiraiya, an idiot, as the commander-in-chief. Ye Feng asked curiously, isn't Zilai also the principal? Why do you have to go out on a mission? Tsunade looked at Yokaide with idiotic eyes and said, ninja school, that is, to train ninjas who can go out on missions, and to endure the principal of the school, as the commander-in-chief of the mission, isn't it normal, huh? This mission should not be for us to endure the students of the school. Tsunade shrugged and said, I heard that this is the meaning, mainly because there are not enough people now, and there have been many border disputes recently, and almost all of them have been dispatched. When necessary, as a freshman of Shinobi, he will also go to the battlefield. Episode 40. Tsunade glanced at Ye Feng with disdain, judging by your greed for life and fear of death, even if the administrative department arranges the task here, it will not be arranged on your head. Uzumaki Mito glanced at Tsunade and said, Tsunade-heim, don't let the administration department arrange tasks for Yokaide, in this case, don't say anything more in the future. Tsunade looked at Uzumaki Mito and said, Grandma, you still want Yokaide out on a mission? Anyway, I don't agree, even if Ye Feng wants to go out on a mission, at least wait until Joshinai has a child. Ye Feng was dumbfounded, is it so direct? How does it sound like I've become a stallion? Wait until Jizunai has a child before I can go out on a mission. Tsunade's words were too much in line with Yikide's heart. Joshinai's face turned blushing shyly, fidgeting, and glared at Ye Feng. How could Tsunade's sister say such a thing? Uzumaki Mito looked at Tsunade and said, if you do this, what will others think of us Senju clan? The foundation of our Konoha is that the village is the first, everyone is a member of the village, and there is no specialization. Besides, Night Maple is the Hokage in the future. He said that he would not be a Hokage, and that he would let Joshinai be a Hokage. Can you be called Hokage if you retreat when you encounter a mission like this? Tsunade pouted and said, it's better than dying. You still think that the death of the rope tree and the broken is not an accident. I don't know if it's an accident, but I don't want another accident, no matter what. He is also the only remaining male member of our Thousand Hands clan. Hokage was also a little confused. Wasn't Tsunade very dissatisfied with himself before? How suddenly, I leaned to my side again. Tsunade was still unconvinced and said, besides, with Hokage's current strength, as long as the teacher retires, with the support of me and your grandmother, he will definitely be able to become a Hokage. Fool around, do you think the strength is strong, and it is okay to have the support of our family? You are still so naive. Ye Feng was also a little puzzled by Uzumaki Mito's words. Uzumaki Mito explained, Naruto, all the ninjas in our village, selected together. It's not that he is the strongest to be able to become Hokage, but everyone in our village recognizes him in their hearts in order to become Hokage. When Ye Feng heard this, a trace of essence flashed in his eyes, and he realized it slightly. Tsunade, back then, Uchiha wanted to be a Hokage, why didn't it succeed? Is he not strong? Uchiha's strength was not weaker than what you wanted at that time, but why did your grandfather inherit the position of Hokage? This is not the operation of our Thousand Hands clan, but the choice of the entire village. Even the Uchiha clan itself is not optimistic about Uchiha spots. You still think that as long as you are the strongest? When Ye Feng heard these words, he suddenly realized. When I used to watch Hokage, many questions were solved at once. Why didn't Orochimaru become Hokage? Was it really the 3 generations of Hokage who single-handedly chose the Water Gate? I'm afraid that there are not many people in Konoha who want a beast-like person like Orochimaru to become Hokage, right? It is the desire of the human heart to become a Hokage. It's subtle. Tsunade pouted and said, Grandma, I know all this, what does that have to do with what I said? You let Ye Feng not accept the task. What do others think of him? What do they think of our Thousand Hands clan? And the face to compete for the position of Hokage? Of course, it's still too early to say this, Ye Feng, you better accumulate battle merits first, and get acquainted with all the upper ninja in the village. Is it still early? Not early at all. Everyone thought that peace would continue, but in the near future, a new round of ninja wars would break out. After that great battle, Sarutobi will abdicate and make way for the 4th generation of Xian. At that time, it was time for Ye Feng to help Joshinai compete for the position of the 4th generation. Grandma, arrange it as you want, I don't want to bother. Then Tsunade said about Yekate's proposal to Joshinai, you are really embarrassed, a flower wants to marry our family Joshinai, Tsunade Tsubasama. Joshinai exhaled softly, and her face turned red. At this time, Jilai also came. He still had a bandage on his face, which he had hit last time. Night Maple. Ye Feng heard that he had also come to find himself, and immediately had a premonition. Himself going to war? Ye Feng was not afraid at all, but there was a faint expectation in his heart. Tsunade interrupted Jiraiya's words, Jiraiya, you come to judge. Ye Feng proposed to my sister Joshinai, is one flower enough? Zilai also touched the side of his face that was bandaged, and said with a forehead, I think it's okay. Before the words fell, Tsunade punched Jiraiya. Ugh. Zilai also flew directly out of the small courtyard. Bang. There was a loud bang outside. 10 minutes later, Zilai also sat in front of Ye Feng, with bandages wrapped around both cheeks, and he almost couldn't recognize him. Ye Feng, I came here because there is a mission coming. Is it a mission over there in Wuyin village? Zilai also nodded and said, yes, it seems that you are still quite well informed. It is like this, the riot over there in the misty hidden village has led to the flight of a large number of civilian ninjas. The bloody suppression of the Ninja Dao 7 makes the civilian ninjas over there very dangerous. Ye Feng said curiously, let's go and save them? Zilai also shook his head and said, we don't have the spare power to save all people, our mission this time is to save one person. This person is very important, she is a little girl, she has 2 blood succession boundaries at a young age. 2 blood succession limits? Who this girl is, has already come out.